Hey there and welcome. I am glad to see you with me tonight. I would love it if you would just drop a comment in the chat to let me know that the audio and the video are excellent. Want to make sure that you can hear and see everything we are going to be talking about today. Excellent. Hi, Joanne. Hi, Christina. Thank you so much for dropping comments. I really appreciate that. And I want you to feel free to drop comments into the chat box throughout our whole time together tonight to ask questions. If the questions are within the scope of what we're discussing, I will do my best to answer them. If they are not within the scope, I will defer them. We're going to stay really tight to being on topic tonight. We are talking about sclerology tonight. We're going to look at a few of the markings that we teach in the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System program. In Dynamic Iridology, we teach 12 of the markings and their integrations with iridology because sclera and iris often corroborate the story. They support one another and help us to understand our clients on a much deeper level. How many of you currently work with clients on any level in a health profession? If you would just raise your hand on the chat box or just let me know or give me the word clients so that I know what level I need to present this information for. Caroline sees clients daily. Excellent. And Joanne does too. Good job. Okay. And Kalima also does. Excellent. Okay. Excellent. All righty. So with that, you want to grab this URL that's on your screen, and I'm going to drop it into the chat as well. This is where you can find out more information about the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System program for health professionals. Just make sure I've typed that in correctly. Yes. Okay, so that is in the chat box. You can grab it there. One of the things I love about doing iridology and sclerology is that it gives me instant feedback, right? It gives me an understanding of my client's symptoms, and it teaches me the questions I need to ask so that I can dive deeper and do an even better job of assessing my clients and creating programs for them. One of the frustrating parts of being a health professional is that because I'm not a licensed medical practitioner, I cannot requisition lab tests. But maybe that's okay. And the reason I say that is because so often it takes so much time to get those lab tests back. And so for practitioners that can requisition tests, then they need to have their clients go to the lab or receive a kit to do the sample. Then they've got to wait for the results to come back. And that wastes valuable time. I'm not saying tests are invalid, but I'm saying we need to be able to work without the tests and then use the tests to corroborate what we are doing. Okay, so this is really an important feature when we are looking at iridology and sclerology, because if we're creating protocols simply off symptoms lists or just off simple observations, we might be missing the heart of the problem. We might not be getting to the root of the problem. So important for us to be able to know how to use iridology and sclerology in order to dive deeper and get the information we want from our clients so we can do a better job for them. Does that make sense? The iridology and sclerology together are a powerful assessment tool. If that makes sense, give me a makes sense in the comments box. Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, so both iridology and sclerology are assessment tools. Now, how many of you currently know of, and let me ask that in a more specific way, how many of you actually use iridology in your practice? Drop that in the chat box for me. How many of you use iridology in your practice now? Kalima does? And Joanne and Kylene? Excellent. Okay, excellent. How many of you do not use iridology yet? If you do not use it, give me a don't in the chat box. And again, that's just going to help me to shape how I present information. Okay, so we've got one brave soul who's admitting a don't. So thank you, Christina, for being brave. I appreciate that. And Melissa as well. Excellent. Okay. So we really do want to use iridology and sclerology together. They're almost always taught as separate courses. And I will in the new year be offering a separate sclerology course. But I will tell you that it works so much better when you've got the iridology as well. In dynamic iridology, we teach iridology and an intro level of sclerology. So you get that foundation that we can build on in a more advanced course. The iris shows us genetic potentials. It shows us where our strengths and weaknesses are in our client. It shows us which organs want to negatively impact other organs. And the contrast with that is the sclera shows us where the body is struggling now. I want that to sink in. The sclera shows us where the body is struggling now. And that's important. I want you to think for a minute. How many different causes do you know for headaches? Right? Maybe you got whacked in the head with a board. Maybe you're dehydrated. Maybe your neck is out of alignment. Maybe your bowels are really backed up and you've got a toxic headache, right? How many reasons do you know for headaches? So many, right? And when we talk to our clients and we dig through the symptoms and we dig through what's going on, we can sometimes figure out what's going on. You know, if they don't have a bowel movement about once every 7 days, then probably the headaches are from being constipated, right? But sometimes the causes are not obvious. And that's where sclerology, backed up with iridology, can help us to dig deeper and be more precise. We always want to have 2 indicators pointing to any potential problem. So we might have one thing in the iris that shows us there's a genetic potential for this, and we might have one thing in the sclera saying, this is exactly what's going on, right? So we want to have that corroboration. We always want to see something in the sclera to build out our story. Sclerology and iridology both take more than a 1-hour mini class to learn, and I know you appreciate that if you have any background in sclerology or iridology. Today, we're going to look at some real-life applications that are appropriate for health professionals to help you understand how sclerology works. Now, how many of you are familiar with sclerology? If you know sclerology, give me sclera. Caroline, yes. Lovely. And Kalima, yes. Okay, great. Today, truly, when we dovetail iridology and genetic potentials and sclerology for where the issues are in trouble right now, it gives us a much clearer picture of what the root is and what pathway we need to take in order to get the best results. These are both learnable skills. Iridology, of course, many of you do that, and some of you also do sclerology. And so very learnable skills. And it's really important for us to remember that when we're learning a skill, the best way to learn it is with someone who will give you feedback and mentoring, right? Right? Isn't that how everything used to be learned before the modern age? Like if you think back to even the early 1900s, you often learned a skill by apprenticing, right? By working with another professional. Well, the same is true, I believe, of iridology and sclerology. So with this training, it's also important that you learn how to integrate it properly. And so that is something we are really we work with a lot in dynamic iridology as well. So when we do an assessment, and for many of you, this is review, when we do an assessment, we look at the pupil shape. That gives us information. We look at the iris. That's going to give us information about the genetic potentials of this client. And then we look at the sclera. And as we study sclerology, we begin to understand that different thicknesses, different shapes, different intensities, different configurations of lines, as they're called in sclerology, and other markings in the sclera give us deep information. And it's truly dynamic. We're not going to dive into all 12 markers today, but we will look at 5 or 6 of them. Today, we're focusing on the sclera, obviously. That's why you're here. Now, you know that the sclera is very reactive. If you've ever had an ugly cry and then gone into the bathroom to splash water on your face and looked at your eyes, they were really bloodshot and irritated, right? And so you do the cool water thing, you take a few deep breaths, you get yourself calming down, and fairly quickly, the redness in your eyes will subside. So these markers, all of these lines, all of these different markers in the sclera add to the story and give us a much deeper understanding of what's going on in the body. Now, some of these things I know you already know. So let's start with the easy one, jaundice, right? It's a medical term, but anyone can assess jaundice just by looking. Yes, jaundice just means yellow. Jaune is French for yellow, right? Jaune. And so when we look at the sclera and we see yellow, we know something is out of balance. Now, the yellow in a sclera is always from the liver, something to do with the liver, usually to do with the liver not conjugating bilirubin properly. It's an indication that there's a liver enzyme imbalance. And sometimes that can be a part of something much bigger, a much bigger problem. So if you see jaundice, you need to ask questions to find out what the client knows about their liver health. Have they been diagnosed with something that could cause this problem? Is it a benign situation that you could support with nutrition, herbs, or lifestyle? Or is it a more potentially serious problem? And you can often assess much of that by having a conversation with your client. Often they will already know that there is a problem. Sometimes they won't. And depending, my screen sharing is paused. Christina, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, thank you. That's really weird that it paused itself. Let me come down here. Okay, I don't know what to, I'm going to stop the share completely. Thank you for letting me know that, because that is, there we go. Better? Do you have me back? Yes, thank you. Thank you, Christina. I really appreciate that. So when we see the yellow, we're going to ask questions. We want to know what our client knows. We want to know what they already understand, right? Because if they already know they're jaundiced, if they already know they've got a liver enzyme issue, they already know they're not conjugating bilirubin properly, or if they've brought in copies of lab tests that show the bilirubin is elevated, then you're not diagnosing anything, right? And you can begin to craft a program to make suggestions that will help the liver to possibly function better. This is one of the reasons why it's really important to have that college level anatomy and physiology under your belt. Really important for us to have that before we learn anything about sclerology or iridology, because we are working with people's health and we need to be able to understand what's going on with them. Have you ever seen anyone who you recognized as being jaundice? Caroline says no. Okay. Interesting. Yes, but not in my clients. Good answer, Kylene. So you've recognized it. And that's really the important thing, is that you've recognized it. You know, and assuming it's a family member maybe, or a good friend, you might be able to have a conversation with them. Not that, what I found is giving advice when it hasn't been asked for is probably not the best idea. It doesn't usually land well. But Kylene says actors. Really? In actors? Interesting. Very interesting. I've never noticed that in actors. I'll have to watch for that. Okay. So notice as we're looking at his eye that we also have this transversal here. This is sitting in the liver reaction field, right? So genetically, we know that there is something that wants to be a little bit wonky with the liver. And that would again bear asking questions. You might be asking questions about nutrition, about all kinds of things. So the story behind this particular eye, this is a fellow in his late 60s. He does not drink alcohol. He does take supplements. He is not on any medications, which is highly unusual for someone over the age of 60. He has worked a lot in chemically toxic environments. He works oil patch on the drilling rigs. And there's a lot of different solvents and chemicals used there. And so there could be exposure from that. While those kinds of exposures are not going to change his iris, they will potentially change the sclera and give us that jaundiced appearance. So in his case, clearly from the whites of his eyes that are yellowy, his liver is not happy. So if his concern was that he had noticed that his eyeballs were becoming yellow, then we could give some dietary advice. We could suggest that he spend time in the sunshine. That's one of the best ways to help the liver get caught up. There's something about sunshine helping the liver conjugate bilirubin more effectively, right? And so we might want to suggest that he see his doctor, that he get some labs done so we know what we're working with, and to go beyond just a bilirubin, get the liver enzymes, the GGT, ALT, AST, get all those things checked so that we can see if something's out of whack, because when those are out of whack, it helps us to understand a little bit more about where things are truly out of balance. But we can at least start with some liver support here. Until the medical results are back, we need to encourage him to drink enough purified water every day, get some sunshine time, and to get enough sleep and to not skip meals. Those are things that can, in susceptible people, contribute to the buildup of jaundice. And this is totally reversible when the right things are done. We also have this gray clouding in here, right? That's another sclera sign that we could potentially talk about. We aren't going to do it right now. There are a lot of different causes for this. Considering his age, there's going to be some influence there as well from that. The pterygium. This is a pterygium. This is also called farmer's eye or surfer's eye. And it is due at least in part to exposure to ultraviolet light, wind, sun, dust, and extreme elements with no eye protections, hence farmer's eye and surfer's eye, right? So it's almost a form of scar tissue. Can't see. So we're looking at this big blob. Kalima, can you see this blue picture with pterygium as the title? Is anybody else having problems seeing this image? Is it not sharing properly? I see the slide, so Joanne can see it. Kalima, I wonder if there's maybe a setting. Christina says no issues. So Kalima, it's on your end. Everyone else is able to see the slide. So you might have to adjust something on your end or log out and log back in. I'm not sure. So with the pterygium, again, this is the result of some harsh exposures, right? And it is a form of scar tissue. It grows and grows kind of in an amoeboid fashion where it moves like a pseudopod almost coming across, and it can get to where it has completely obliterated the pupil. It can be removed surgically, but it will usually grow back. There is also some strong indication that the growth of this can be influenced by the liver, that it's an inefficiency in the way the liver manages proteins. So when we look at this, we would also look for liver indicators in the eye. We would certainly ask about diet, and we might look at other indicators in the iris that would teach us about protein digestion and assimilation. The meander. This is a meander. So meander literally looks like what a stream or a little river or a creek would look like running through some farmland. Twisty and turny, never going in a straight line. So this is the lymphatic iris of a farmer who is 70 plus years old. He is lean and he is fit. Now his farm is small. He's actually works as an oil patch consultant, part-time on contract. And so his farm is not a massive operation. It's really a hobby farm, but he does all the work himself. And he does everything he can by hand. He doesn't have lots of big fancy machinery because he just doesn't need it for his tiny, tiny little farm. So if he's got to move bales of hay, he's throwing those by hand. If he's mucking out the stalls, he's doing that by hand. If he's feeding the livestock, he's doing that by hand. And he does not have any hired help. So what did he want my help with? Well, it was an interesting situation that was a member of the Kiwanis Club, which is a service organization. I don't know if it's in the States or not. And they do a lot of fundraising for initiatives to help underprivileged children. I had given a presentation at the Kiwanis Club about something to do with holistic health. So he was on my email list. When I got my new Iridology camera several years ago, I sent it out to all of the people on my list. And he wanted to come and see what this was all about because I said, I'll give you a 30-minute free assessment. I want to take photos of your eyes and I will choose 3 of the important markers based on what you tell me your health is like. And then I'm going to give you 3 recommendations of things you can do. So he was curious. He was only curious. He wasn't going to do anything I asked him to do or instructed him to do. But interestingly, he didn't have any health issues, right? He's fit, he's active, he kind of eats whatever he wants, but he's fit and he's active and he looks really good. And even his eyes, well, there's some things here that we should talk about, right? So we look in the sclera, of course, for markings, and we look in the iris and we look at the pupil shape. So his sclera has a lot of these meanders in it. We've got this one, we've got another one down here, we've got another one up here, we've got lots of meanders. So these are twisty and turny vessels, we call them lines. We had a conversation about his diet and his lifestyle because we need that information, right, to give really decent recommendations and to understand where we're going. So his diet was, like I said, generally good, with the exception that when he gets together with his Kiwanis buddies, he'll have 3 or 4 drinks. And he gets together with them a lot, even outside of Kiwanis meetings. So he drinks a fair amount. His sclera shows a lot of circulatory system markers in general. And these meanders teach us that there is congestion to varying degrees in different organs. And then, so when we know this, then we can correlate our map of the sclera to what we see in the iris to understand genetic potentials and what is active now, where the concerns are now. So when we think this through, the meanders suggest circulatory congestion. What causes circulatory congestion? What is the mechanism in the bloodstream that causes circulatory congestion? Cholesterol is a part of it. It's not necessarily the bad guy, but it certainly is a part of it. Yeah. Inflammation, yeah, there's always inflammation in there. And the inflammation is what triggers the cholesterol to elevate and begin to deposit, right? Okay, so if we know that, then we could have plaque developing and sedimenting in his arteries, right? And if we have the plaque building up, because there's inflammation and arterial damage, there has to be inflammation throughout the entire body. High fat processed food diet, high fat, particularly your seed oils, are not great here. And if he's got a lot of refined carbs, right? And the alcohol counts as a refined carb. So because this suggests there may be congestion in the arteries, and there are iris markings that suggest he may have cholesterol out of balance, then I would want to see some labs from him, and especially because of his alcohol consumption, right? He is showing indications that he's working on beginning to block arteries. So if he were to follow up with this and go to the doctor and get the labs, then we at least can start somewhere. Like, we can get him thinking about reducing his alcohol. We could get him eating more vegetables, getting more minerals and vitamins and fiber and other nutrients from plant-based things, doing less refined foods, maybe see if he's willing to choose better restaurants, which, I mean, he eats in really nice restaurants. That doesn't necessarily mean the food is healthier. It just means they used a better cut of meat for the steak, right? So when we look at him physically, he's lean, he's tall, he's toned. So we wouldn't necessarily think he would be at risk for cardiac issues or blood sugar issues, which the indicator for cholesterol in the sclera also correlates to risk of blood sugar issues, right? And so you wouldn't think that he would be at risk for those looking at him, but his eyes tell a different story when we put it all together. Now, and I know you've noticed this, I didn't say he has a disease. I haven't diagnosed a disease process. I've often said he's at risk. He's at risk, right? So we would want more proof, and we would need to find ways to get him to believe that he needs to change what he's doing. Pinguecula. This is a pinguecula. So she's got this on both eyes. This is a female. She's in her late 30s. She came in wanting help with allergies and depression. Both of those problems can have many physiological root causes, and certainly, particularly with the depression and even somewhat with the allergies, there can be emotional root causes as well. Her eyes are lymphatic, so we've got that blue base. And there's many other colors on top of that blue base. She's got rust and pale yellow and very pale yellow and orange. She's got lots of colors in her eyes. She also has these yellowish blobs that look like chicken fat, and these are the pinguecula. It's not uncommon to have just one. They typically happen medial and lateral, and you can have two in one eye, or you could have have one in each eye, just the way she has here. When we see a pinguecula, it suggests that she's got problems processing her fats and proteins and calcium, that her liver's not managing that well. This builds over time, and I've never seen one disintegrate with cleansing and fasting. I've heard it might be possible, but I've never seen it happen. These can also be surgically removed, but if you haven't fixed the diet, if you haven't fixed the energy going in, you're not going to fix the problem, and it's going to grow back. It's interesting that these eyes also show, these iRide photos also show strong liver predispositions. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, they say that depression comes from the liver. So we've got iris markers and sclera markers pointing to the liver. So we need to recommend some liver work, diet, herbs, lifestyle, maybe some emotional work as well, if you've got the training to do that, right? So I would do a bit of each of these. I knew this woman fairly well. She was a personal trainer at a gym I used to go to, and I used to go on bike rides with her when we were training for triathlon. So I would do a little bit of each. Maybe the first thing I'm going to suggest is that she get more leafy greens. I might at the same time add a liver formula for her, a herbal formula. She's very physically active, so I might encourage her to make sure she's getting enough rest. And I might add an aromatherapy formula to help her with some of the emotional stuff she was going through at the time. And I might even suggest that she seek out counseling. Have you ever seen a pinguecula that you've noticed? On strangers, Christina? Yeah, many times. Yeah. Amazing. So good. On family. Now you know their secrets, right? Iridology and sclerology both work together to help us understand, again, what the imbalance is and how to work with it. But again, it takes practice and feedback and mentoring and training to learn how to do this well and to recognize this and to understand the types of questions you would want to ask to combine the pinguecula to the iris markings to the person's symptoms. So important that we understand that. Kylene says she's maybe seen this in a family member. So I bet you're going to have a slightly closer look next time you see that person, right? Kind of sneak a peek. Encapsulation. Encapsulation. This is an important one. This is where a blood vessel loops around. Its end, only at the end, where the end loops around and either closes off completely like we have here, or it just loops around like a fish hook. This would be a partial, this would be a complete. This suggests that there may be an infection or a pocket of toxins or something in the body that the body cannot deal with now. And so it's built a wall around it, or it is building a wall around it. It's trying to sequester it and keep it out of the way. These, whether it's a partial or a complete, give us slightly different information. And sometimes these pockets are in the body are so small that the client is not aware that they've got this problem. Sometimes it's as obvious as a chronically swollen lymph node or a cyst or an abscess. But again, sometimes it's small and it's deep and you can't palpate it, so you don't even know it's there. This one right here suggests that, this one over here suggests that there might have been a history of a kidney infection that was not entirely resolved. So again, we would want to then look at the iris. Are there any kidney markers there? And does the client have any recollection of or history of kidney infections? When we see these, we need to ask questions about health history to understand what is going on. Only then can we make appropriate recommendations. Again, we never diagnose, but depending on your other training, you might be able to requisition labs or suggest to your client that they work with their medical caregiver to secure specific labs that can add depth and clarity to your assessment. I frequently do that. I will frequently ask my clients if they're comfortable going back to their doctor and asking for certain labs, and they almost always are. And so I give them a list of things that I would like to see numbers on and results of. Sometimes here in Canada, the doctors will push back a little bit. And they'll say, well, no, we can't requisition that, and that's an expensive test, and there's nothing that says we should get that because the doctors don't know sclerology and iridology. So sometimes we have to settle for what we can get. And if that comes back okay, then we've got to work with what we've got, right? So can you see how understanding this marking fully and knowing what its placement means as an indication of where the problem resides in the body gives you the upper hand in knowing what to do to clear things out, right? If they're sequestering an infection in the kidneys, what would you do with that? What could you do with the training you've got? I want to see some recommendations, some suggestions in your chat box. What are some things that you would do if you saw an indication that said, oh, this looks like you've sequestered an infection of some sort in the kidney? Have you? Oh, yes, I'm very prone to kidney infections. All righty. So now what are you going to recommend? What would you recommend from the training you've got? If you're typing, keep typing. I'll read your answers in a minute, but I'm not going to answer it for you. Doing a few bonus markers here tonight because I think I promised you 3 and I think we're doing 5 or 6. So you're getting some bonus tonight. When we see these fine blood vessels attached to the outer edge of the iris, this is called allergy netting. This is an indication with the placement of this particular netting that this person is very prone to food allergies. So this is a young man. He is now 28 years old. And when he was born, there was a bit of trauma with his birth, but everything was fine within literally just minutes. He did certainly have eczema by the time he was about 3 weeks old. We're talking head to toe, leaking, oozy, messy eczema, really awful, right? And so he was exclusively breastfed till he was 6 months old, and he received breast milk in large amounts until he was 15 months old. We worked with him, and with supplements, we were able to get his skin cleared up within just a few weeks. He now still can have an outbreak, little patch on the back of his leg if he drinks orange juice, which when you know your lymphatic constitution, you know orange juice is not a good answer for them. And he does have asthma. And as you probably know, eczema and asthma are best friends. They are basically the same chemistry showing up in different body tissues. Okay. So back to our kidney question, Joanne says, I would make sure their elimination systems were working optimally, especially the kidney and liver, and recommend foods and supplements to support that. Really good. Kylene says proper hydration. Muscle tests, these messages keep popping up on my screen. Just let me shut them down. Kylene says proper hydration daily, muscle testing to see if there is a certain supplement to support, possibly look into diuretics depending, look at immune system. I might tend to go a little bit more high test than that because this has been sequestered. It needs to be pulled out. So I would probably be wanting to not be so gentle, especially if it was an established client and I knew them well. And I would probably want to be doing some kind of a cleanse that included immune support on the side, right? Because we need to get it pulled out. This is what one of my dynamic iridology graduates said about the course. Wow, that is all I can say. What a fantastic course with a fantastic teacher that actually cares about your success. I am so happy I found her. Angela is a registered dental hygienist, has been for 20 years, but has been studying naturopathy and homeopathy on the side to help her own family. She said, and this is a few years ago now, I want to open my business using iridology to help others be healthier. I've already signed up with Judith for her next class so I can brush up on the body systems and learn herbology along with it. She actually is still working as a registered dental hygienist, and she has opened her own clinic. She now works out of a chiropractor's office, I believe, 1 or 2 days a week. And she's loving using iridology there to help her assess. What type of cleanse, Christina? I custom build cleanses for people based on their symptoms, based on their eyes, based on what I feel like they need, right? So it's not quite as easy as what type of cleanse. You've been listening to me now for 40 minutes, so time to introduce myself here. I am a level 3 certified iridologist and level 3 certified iridology instructor through the International Iridology Practitioners Association. And they make us. We have to produce CEUs every 2 years. And when we prove that we are up to date, we get new badges. So these are the last few badges I've earned. Last time I checked, there were only 10 level 3 certified iridology instructors in the world, and I was one of the first 3. Level 3 is the highest level of iridology IPA offers. And yeah, pretty cool. I got into holistic healing way back. Well, I was interested in it in high school, only I didn't know that's what it was called. And my family was very medical model. So there would have been no way I could have even started doing anything with herbs or anything much more than basic nutritional things. So when I left home to go to university, I started getting more interested, more involved. I've studied iridology under 8 different teachers, 3 different styles. I've got multiple credentials also in, talk about those in a minute. In 2022, IPA gave me the Instructor of the Year Award. And in 2024, they gave me the Iridologist of the Year Award, which just really blew me away, both of those. So I've paid my dues and I am there. I am also a professional member of the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals and the Canadian Association of Natural Nutritional Practitioners, and a professional member of the Alberta Herbalist Association. And so with all of this, over the many years, I've designed and taught many different courses in iridology, iridology combined with herbology. I've taught courses for general public. Now I focus on teaching people who have a college level anatomy and physiology program under their belt. And my goal is to raise the standard of iridology practice in the holistic health field, to help legitimize iridology and have it recognized for the valuable science that it is. Another case. Thank you, Caroline. Another case. This is a fellow who is 79 years old, one of my favorite clients. Okay, I got to admit, I fall in love with every one of my clients. I love the people I work with in my clinic, and I love my students. It's just, I'm so blessed with the people that come into my world. This fellow came to me because he had excessive abdominal weight. He wanted to lose the weight, and he was carrying quite a bit of weight around his midsection. That weight was affecting his knees and his ability to walk. His knees hurt with every step he took. He had had prostate cancer, which was treated with radiation and hormones. So, of course, he's on estrogen. And what do we know estrogen does? It makes you gain weight, right? And that's exactly what it was doing for him. He came in with diagnoses from his doctor of congestive heart failure. And his symptoms were irregular heartbeat, shortness of breath, reflux, and heartburn. He came in taking 8 different medications, including an anti-anxiety medication to help him stay relaxed when he couldn't breathe easily because of the congestive heart failure. So as we worked together and as I asked him questions, it was obvious that he had a hiatal hernia. I can't diagnose that, but the symptoms were all there. There's a little screening test that I did with him, and it was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that you have what we call a locked diaphragm, which is the non-diagnostic term for hiatal hernia. So I sent him to an osteopath, and we got that released, and instantly the reflux was down, his breathing was easier, everything started getting better from that moment. All of his symptoms and even some things that I see in his eyes made me wonder if he was insulin resistant. And I can see from his eyes that he is very prone to carrying excess uric acid. He's got gray patches in his eyes, which again, we don't have time to go into. He's got a pinguecula, right? We've talked about that and its liver influence. He's got some markers in his eyes that suggest he does not process his carbohydrates well. And he's also got markers that suggest his pancreas genetically has never been a happy camper. Right? He's got dirty yellow throughout his irides as well. So we're dovetailing sclera and iris. Dirty yellow, that suggests he tends to want to build up uric acid, which very interestingly is a key player in insulin resistance and cardiovascular issues. He brought in his labs. His hemoglobin A1C was 7.7. You're diagnosed as type 2 diabetic at 5.9. And we really want it lower than 5.7. And if I have my druthers, I want it down around 5.3, 5.4. He had low leukocytes. His lymphocytes were very low normal. His hematocrit was very low normal. His erythrocytes were low. His testosterone, of course, was very low. And he had elevated triglycerides. I am not surprised by any of that with what I see in his eyes. So we got him into an osteopath, and I gave him some little exercises to do to help release that diaphragm, to kind of get prepared for the osteopath, something that he could continue after the osteopath to keep that diaphragm moving well. I suggested using berberine IR for what I felt was an inability to manage his carbs properly, his insulin levels. And we got him on copious amounts of omega-3. Now, he had been gathering nutrition information from, I don't know, people on airplanes or popular magazines or something. So breakfast for him, and for those of you that have a nutrition background, you're going to want to just shake your head. His breakfast was a rice cake with marmalade, because it had no fat. So the very first thing I suggested was that we get him to have a couple of poached eggs and some stir-fried veggies for breakfast. Now, I want you to picture this. This is a very fun, easy to tease and teases you back kind of fellow, right? We spent so much time laughing in his appointments that when I suggested poached eggs and stir-fried veggies, and he likes to cook, he looked at me and said, "That's not a breakfast. I could never eat that for breakfast." I said, "Well, maybe you could. How about we do an experiment and you try it for a week and let me know how it goes?" Well, the funny thing was, after a week, he sent me an email. He said, "If anyone had ever told me I would enjoy sauteed vegetables or stir-fried vegetables and poached eggs for breakfast, I would have thought they were crazy. But man, this is good." Yes, we win. We win. I also wanted him to walk for 30 minutes a day, but his knees hurt. So I initially started out with, "Can you walk for 5 minutes after each meal?" Well, interesting thing. And I suggested sleeping on a wedge pillow, right? Just to make it a little easier for him to breathe. I was surprised his doctors hadn't recommended that he raise his torso a little bit, but they hadn't. He came back in after 4 weeks, and he was a happy camper. And I asked him, "How's it going?" He went, "Good." And I went, "Tell me about good." He said, "Well, I am wearing pants I haven't worn in 3 years because I've lost so many inches off my waist." I'm going, "This is good." He said, "The bathroom scale doesn't say I've lost anything, but I've lost inches. This is good. We'll take what we can get." And then he said, "I can walk for 30 minutes straight without stopping." And I'm going, holy doodle. 4 weeks ago, 5 minutes was just about killing you. He's like, "Yeah, I know. But you know what? My knees don't hurt anymore." Pretty simple solutions. He was also sleeping better. He said, "I love the wedge pillow. I sleep so much better. I feel good when I wake up in the morning." Simple recommendations. And we continue to work with him from there to progress him along. So as we talk about learning iridology, some people want to learn iridology, they want to learn sclerology, and they just want to do it because it's interesting stuff. But after they learn it, they discover that when we combine sclerology and iridology together, which I do in the dynamic iridology assessment system course, you get both, you'll be able to assess your clients more quickly, more accurately, develop better and faster rapport. Now, how does that work? Client told you symptoms. You look at their eyes, and now you're asking questions that are specific to that client. You're not asking them a shotgun pattern of questions that you ask every client. You are lasering in on questions that are relevant to them. I had this happen again just this last week. I had a client come in. It was her second appointment with me. Actually, her third. We did a little phone touch base appointment halfway in between because she was having some issues. And she came in, and I'm looking at her eyes, and I'm looking at her sclera again, and I'm talking, we're going a little deeper than we did in appointment number one. And I'm saying to her, your eyes suggest that you might hold a grudge a little bit, that you might kind of let things get under your skin and just hold on to them. I don't want to believe that's true about you, but your eyes are saying that. And she thought for a minute, she went, oh yeah, oh yeah. There's this person at work. And I could just see my client's blood pressure rising, telling me about this person at work. It was just incredible. And she said, yeah, I do. I've got a problem. I've got a problem with anger here. I've got a problem with holding on to the resentment. She said, what do I need to do about this? So we'll work on that next appointment with some tapping and things like that to help her learn how to not be bugged by this person at work. But fast rapport, with the kind of rapport we build, with the kinds of questions we ask that are laser focused because of sclerology and iridology, clients feel like we can see inside them, and they feel like they can trust us. And I hear things sometimes in a first appointment where they'll say, I've never told this to anybody before. Pretty amazing. Iridology and sclerology together eliminate the need for an intake form. I don't use an intake form. I have them sign a release form, absolutely, but I don't have them fill in a questionnaire. I've never had a client complain about not having to fill in a questionnaire. They appreciate that we talk, that they tell me their story, and I need to hear their story. I need to see them deliver their story, because there's all kinds of nuances and clues in their body posture, in their facial expression, in the words they choose, in their vocal inflections. So I don't use an intake form because I've got iridology and sclerology here. This is just all so important. I know a lot of health professionals, and I hope this isn't you, but if it is, I can help you, that find that creating their protocols takes a lot of time. They see their client, gather information, go off and write a protocol. It takes 2 or 3 hours to write the protocol, and then they email it to the client or they deliver it at the next appointment. That's not great. Not as a business model, not for you, not for your client. You want to be able to create protocols right when you're with your client. So important, so important. Karen Choate, who is a CNHP, she has just earned her naturopathic credentials in the last couple of years. She sent me this. She said, this was just after she had certified in my course, which was like 5 years ago, I think. I just returned from a regenerative detox course where iridology is implemented. Most people I talked with did not have anywhere near the same experience with their iridology education. No support, unanswered questions, and a lot of confusion. Mostly they finished their classes not knowing how to implement what they had learned. I feel so absolutely blessed to have been taught by you. I feel totally supported, even still, as I've graduated, like I said, almost 5 years ago now. Love it, love it. That is the goal. Again, to raise the standard in iridology, to raise the standard in teaching iridology, so that my students know that they can always come back to me with questions. We do that twice a month, actually. We have a set office hours time where students and grads and certified grads, I don't care when they graduated or when they took my course, they can come back and present cases and ask questions, get business support. It's all there for them, right? All there for them. Kimberly's at Dallas, another one of my certified grads. I believe she's a level 3 certified grad now. If you're wondering which iridology course to take, you can stop looking. You found it. Judith Cobb is an excellent instructor with many years of experience. She is caring and compassionate, dedicated to the field of iridology and her students. Kimberly has so many credentials under her belt in Eastern and Western medical approaches, and she is and I always get this wrong, she works in an imaging office and does the imaging and coordinates with the doctors on what is seen in the images. So she came in with a lot of training, and this is what she said about the iridology course. She loved it. So good, so good. Sometimes I get the concern that people don't have time to study. And when we do the dynamic iridology course, we set it up so you will have time to study to implement this. Dynamic Iridology is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, naturopaths. Read that as anyone who's got a college level anatomy and physiology course under their belt. Registered nurses, fantastic. For these people who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. For these people who want to stop working unpaid overtime creating programs. They want to stop overwhelming their clients with programs that are too big, too involved, too heavy. They want to increase their client compliance. And they want their clients to keep coming back year after year. Does that sound good? Is that what you would like? Is that what you're looking for? Let me know in the chat box. Give me an oh yeah in the chat box if that sounds like what you would like iridology to do for you. So if you've got college level anatomy and physiology with a grade of over 80%, or you're a licensed medical professional, and you want to learn iridology and sclerology at a professional level, you want to learn how the markers play off each other, and you want to learn what questions the eyes want you to ask, then you want to learn how to create programs your clients can be more successful implementing. You want to be mentored for the long term, not just while you're in the course, but for years to come. If you want to know what's included in the course so you can make just a good decision for yourself, then this link that I'm putting into the chat box and I'm just going to make sure, I should have double checked this because I haven't checked this link in a while. Just give me a half a second here to make sure this takes us where we want to go. And it does. This link that I'm putting in the chat box will allow you to set up a time to speak with me, where we can talk about your credentials, your goals, what you want to do with iridology, where we can look and ensure that this is the right program for you. Whoops. So, case study. I think this is our final case study tonight. We've got a few slides here. When we look at these eyes, they're not completely in focus, and for that I apologize. I am not the world's best photographer, but I'm a really good iridologist and a really good clinician. So we look at her eyes, and we know that she is biliary. So we know liver wants to be involved in everything, and that we have features of lymphatic and hematogenic playing together here. We see that she is the connective tissue type, which means she doesn't do collagen well. Her body doesn't replace collagen easily. And she's got undercurrents of polyglandular, which means her hormones genetically want to be a little bit nutty. She's got indications that liver enzymes have been out of balance for a long time. And when we look at her sclera, what we see here is we've got fermentation signs. So not managing her carbohydrates properly. And we've got more in her right sclera as well. That's where I needed to focus, because when she came in, she's in her late 50s. She's actually been a client of mine for about 25 years, off and on. Like, they come in for a few, get feeling great, disappear for a while, come back when they're falling apart again, right? That's just how it goes. So she was on a coming back in phase. And she was not happy that she had gained 30 pounds in the last 3 years. I can't imagine there's many women who would be happy with gaining 30 pounds in 3 years, right? There's not that many severely underweight women. And so clearly there was some things out of whack. So as we're looking at this and looking at how things work together, understanding how the liver, how all of the endocrine glands, and how the stomach work together to prepare carbohydrates for digestion, and then to manage how they get used, whether they're being used for energy, put into storage for fat, or being shunted over to cholesterol or triglycerides. When we understand all that, it becomes crystal clear, absolutely crystal clear, especially when you know her diet. Breakfast was coffee. Lunch was coffee. Occasionally somebody else where she works would bring in donuts or a pastry or something, she'd eat that. Supper would be something quick and easy that she could feed to her two young adult sons who live with her, but were apparently not capable of preparing a decent meal for her. Okay, that was a little bit harsh, but true. Like, mom is working full time. You guys that are working part time, get off the couch, put the computers away, and cook for your mother, right? Okay, that was me speaking as a mother. And so, as we talked about this, what we uncovered for her was that she has a lot of issues around food. So it wasn't going to work for me to say, I want you to do sauteed veggies and poached eggs for breakfast. Because her husband, when she was married to him, expected that no matter what she had done in that day, whether it was all day at home with the kids or whether she was working full time, that she would have supper on the table at 6. Preparing food was a demand. Growing up, you cleaned your plate, young lady. Don't you know there are starving children in Africa? Kind of thing, right? And so all these being forced to prepare food and forced to eat food, and now she didn't want to eat food at all. And when she did, she was making poor food choices. So the first thing we needed to do was start working with tapping to begin to break through some of those things. Also needed to give her some really simple nutrition ideas. Like, I did send her with a protein shake, right? We needed to get more protein into her. Could she get a protein shake down? Could she sip on that while she was at work? Not the best option, but certainly better than just drinking coffee, right? So we had to start very slowly with tiny little baby steps as we began to unravel all of the emotional baggage she was carrying from 55 plus years, right? And as we did that, we began to see that her nutritional status was improving slightly, slowly, baby steps. Her energy was improving. She'd stopped gaining weight. That's the first thing, right? Stop the bus. And then she slowly started to lose the weight. It came off very, very slowly. And so she's still working at it because, we're looking at like 1 to 2 pounds a month. It's going to take a while. But the most important thing here is not the weight loss. Is that she's learning how to care for herself with food. Right? That's a life skill that she was never allowed to learn, and now she is. So that's very exciting indeed. So with that, my friends, that I believe is all the information I have for you tonight. Again, there's, if you want to just look at a website to see what is involved with dynamic iridology, you can certainly just go to this URL that you see on the screen that I have now dropped into the chat box. So you can go there, have a look at some information, and see what you think. And there's also an invitation on that page if you feel so inclined and you're thinking, I think I might want to enroll in dynamic iridology. I just need some more information. There's an invitation on that page, the course-info page, that will allow you to schedule a time to chat with me. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. I truly appreciate it. I hope you've learned something that you can use with your next client. And I look forward to speaking with each of you in the next few weeks about the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System program. Take good care. We'll talk soon. Bye for now.